Okay, picture this. The year is 2022, and you decide to open up TikTok, and you're scrolling as usual until you notice an unusual video. The video shows a still from the long-running American TV show The Simpsons, with the entire family standing in their front yard with one character you don't recognize. Now, you've been a fan of the show for quite a while, but despite that, you can't recognize this character at all. But people in the comments keep talking about how they remember the character from their childhood or from an old episode of the show that they had seen years ago. At first, you don't really think much of the character or of the video you just watched, but then as you keep scrolling, you begin to see the character more and more. You see him in photos of the show, screen grabs from TV movies, you even start seeing gameplay of him running around in old Simpsons video games. And after you see all of these videos, one name keeps coming up for this character, Graggle Simpson, and you can't help but think to yourself, who the hell is Graggle? But before we can start learning about Graggle, or where he came from, or where all these videos began coming from, we first need to have an understanding of the show that precedes him. Understanding the show that precedes Graggle isn't a hard thing to do, though. After all, who hasn't heard of The Simpsons? It's been on air for over 30 years, and has become one of the most iconic cartoons of all time. With the show's popularity, like many other animated shows such as Family Guy or SpongeBob, memes related to The Simpsons started popping up as early as the late 90s with the infancy of the internet and chat rooms. Popular Simpsons memes began to come up around the mid-2000s when people who would create old YouTube poop videos would take old episodes of The Simpsons and remix them to include memes and jokes where there originally weren't. And of course, I bring up these old Simpsons memes because Graggle himself is a meme that began passing around in 2022, though the original images with him included in them date back to 4chan posts from around 2015. The popular Graggle Simpson posts from 2022 would typically be a photo of the character alongside the Simpsons family, which everybody knows, with a caption at the top explaining that he's a forgotten character from very old episodes, who was removed from the show due to him having poor ratings in the episodes he was in. There were also a couple different fake origins that people had made for the character, such as saying Graggle was Bart's older brother, who had become long forgotten as the show had moved away from his character. Of course, as you know now, all of this was baloney, and there's no actual character in the show named Graggle Simpson, though this didn't stop people on the internet from creating more fake photos of him in old episodes. People started making video clips with him in them, and they even modded Graggle Simpson into the old Simpsons hit and run game from 2003. I think part of the reason for Graggle's widespread popularity during the early 2020s was the internet's commitment to the bit, as everybody began making different posts involving Graggle, and as I've already mentioned, putting him, actually into old Simpsons media. Though I think the biggest reason of them all as to why Graggle became so popular was the concept of the Mandela effect. For those of you unfamiliar, the Mandela effect describes when somebody or a group of people remember something as fact when it really didn't happen. For example, the Berenstain Bears actually being the Berenstain Bears, or the idea that Nelson Mandela had died in prison when really he hadn't. Perhaps a Mandela effect style situation like with Graggle Simpson, where there really could be a forgotten Simpsons character that only some people remember and he was subsequently removed from old episodes, made Graggle a very interesting topic in the Simpsons community. Of course, for people who had known better on the internet and knew for a fact that Graggle Simpson didn't exist, he was still a fun character to talk about, as it had people talking about The Simpsons again, which is a show that ratings have kind of been on a downward spiral for the past 20 years, give or take. And Graggle evolved into a way for longtime Simpsons fans to satirize the show's decline in quality during its later seasons. They would normally do this by creating an edited Graggle photo of him in a current episode of The Simpsons and use him as a way to represent the show running out of ideas with this simple-looking character who's annoying and doesn't really do anything. Even nowadays, in Simpsons-adjacent communities on the internet, people still talk about Graggle, and during that time in 2022, it's undeniable that Graggle was impossible to escape from. I remember scrolling through TikTok in 2022 and 2023 and being absolutely bombarded with videos and photos of Graggle running around with the Simpsons family like they were real photos when really they weren't. Whether you're a fan of the character or The Simpsons in general, it's undeniable that Graggle was not only an interesting step for the Simpsons community on the internet, or Simpsons media in general, but also the internet as a whole. Graggle was the first of his kind, and he gave birth to a bunch of other imitation characters of people inserting new characters into their favorite shows or games and saying that they've always been there. At around a similar time to when Graggle became popular, a fake Mario enemy called Scrupulous Fingor was inserted into several games and old Mario cartoons under the guise that he was a cut enemy that had just been forgotten by the main Mario fanbase. And that's just one example. I swear to you, there were hundreds of these coming up almost every month during 2022 and 2023 of these fake characters that people were reinserting into their favorite shows and pretending like they were part of the show the entire time. Even if you're not very familiar with him or you're not a big fan of The Simpsons, it's undeniable that during those few months in 2022, Graggle had undoubtedly taken over the internet.